Welcome to the Finely Tuned Infrastructure Podcast by Rhythmic Technologies. Today we're jumping into something a lot of you are probably dealing with. Just the sheer amount of noise around AWS managed service providers or MSPs. If your infrastructure feels more like a drag than a driver, you've likely heard pitches full of words like innovative, strategic.
Mm.
Our goal today is really to cut through all that vagueness. We want to pin down 5 concrete things you should demand from an MSP partner if you actually want to move faster. We're not just talking about, keeping the lights on. This is about building a foundation for real innovation and efficient scaling.
Yeah, it's a frustrating landscape when you look closely.
Mm.
The reality, and Rhythmic points this out in their blog, is that thousands of companies out there are, well, essentially just resellers. They slap their label on a monitoring tool, offer some basic break-fix support maybe, and then charge you based on your AWS spend. You get a dashboard, they call it management, but there's often no real accountability for the architecture itself.
Okay, so if the market is kind of full of these glorified help desks alongside the real deals, how does someone leading tech actually tell them apart? How do you find a real strategic partner?
That's exactly the problem the AWS MSP Program designation was designed to solve. It exists specifically to filter out those platform resellers. It identifies the providers who offer true end-to-end service and can prove, real operational maturity. And getting this validation, it's tough. Fewer than 70 providers in the U.S. have actually passed it.
Wow, fewer than 70.
Yeah, it's deliberately a high bar because AWS is essentially putting their stamp on these providers' capabilities.
That difference, validated versus just claimed expertise, that's really key for anyone listening, right? Because let's be honest, your infrastructure probably didn't follow some neat blueprint. It likely grew organically, maybe started small, now it's sprawling, and your team is constantly putting out fires. Meanwhile, costs are creeping up, but development feels like it's slowing down. It's that classic technical debt cycle.
It absolutely is. And that technical debt, it collects interest, right?
Right.
In the form of downtime, delayed features.
Yeah.
Things that really hurt the business. So when you're picking a partner, you need more than promises. You need solid proof, tangible capabilities.
Agreed. So let's ditch the vague stuff and lay out these 5 tangible benefits you only get with the truly AWS-validated MSP. Let's start with number 1. Validated technical expertise. You mentioned the validation is tough. Rhythmic's blog calls it brutal by design. That sounds expensive. Doesn't that overhead the audits? The processes just get passed on to the client as higher fees? Are you just trading costs?
That's a fair question, a really important one. But the difference is how that overhead translates. The things required for validation, like continuous training, standardized procedures, audited compliance checks, they actually drive huge efficiency gains for the client. The rigor itself minimizes mistakes and forces automation. So yes, there's investment, but it pays off in reliability and speed.
Okay. So it's less about having certified people and more about having validated processes that anyone qualified can execute reliably.
Exactly. The validation demands audited proof of things like 247 monitoring, really detailed incident response playbooks with strict SLAs, and evidence of successful large-scale client projects. AWS actually audits their operational maturity, their real ability to manage production systems every single year.
Okay, let's make this concrete. The blog mentions a healthcare tech company needing SOC 2 certification. Lots of MSPs say they help with compliance. What did the validation mean operationally in that case?
Right, so this company, they kind of underestimated the complexity, especially the continuous part of compliance.
Yeah.
For anyone not familiar, SOC 2 Type 1 is about design. Do your policies look okay on paper? But Type 2, that's the hard part. It's proving those controls actually worked effectively over time, usually 6 months or even a year.
Which means you need to be constantly collecting evidence. You can't just scramble at audit time.
Precisely. A standard provider might just give them some templates and wish them luck. But a validated partner like Rhythmic, they didn't just provide templates, they implemented a whole compliance framework. They guided them through Type 1, sure, but crucially, they built automated evidence collection for Type 2 using tools like Jira and AWS Config.
So what's the big takeaway for someone listening?
Compliance stopped being this big, scary manual effort that drained their engineers. It became an automated, sustainable system that freed up their internal team to actually build product, knowing the compliance evidence was being gathered reliably in the background, ready for the auditors year after year.
That's a powerful shift. And it leads nicely into benefit number 2, end-to-end cloud lifecycle management. Having expertise is great, but it needs to cover the whole journey, right? Not just fixing things when they break. Why is that holistic view so much better than just monitoring?
Because monitoring only tells you after something's broken. It doesn't prevent the break. It doesn't help you architect things correctly in the first place, or migrate efficiently, or continuously optimize for cost and performance. The AWS MSP validation demands proof across that entire lifecycle: architecture, migration, optimization, operations. If your provider only sells monitoring, they're leaving you exposed during those really critical design and improvement phases.
Okay, let's illustrate the kind of complexity a true MSP handles. The blog uses an example of a cybersecurity company needing infrastructure for certificate authority operations. That involved integrating physical hardware security modules, HSMs, with the cloud. Why is that so tricky?
HSMs. Yeah, they're physical boxes, super secure for managing crypto keys. That's their job. But bridging that physical security with the elasticity and, well, the distributed nature of the cloud, that creates big challenges around latency, secure connections, key management consistency. It's a really complex hybrid cloud problem.
So how did Rhythmic tackle that? What was the solution?
They built this really sophisticated hybrid setup. They used AWS Direct Connect. Think of it like a private, dedicated network pipe linking the company's on-prem HSM securely to AWS. They spread this across multiple AWS regions for high availability. Then they used AWS Lambda, which is serverless compute, to process certificate requests without needing dedicated servers running all the time. And finally, Amazon OpenSearch was used for high-speed analytics on all the security logs and operations.
So OpenSearch kind of acts as the central nervous system, watching everything to ensure security and compliance at massive scale?
You got it. And that system now reliably handles billions of transactions every day. It shows that end-to-end management isn't just about patching servers. It's about solving genuinely hard architectural puzzles.
Right, which brings us to benefit 3, enhanced security and compliance that actually protects you. Security can't just be a checkbox exercise. It has to be ongoing.
Absolutely. And the AWS MSP validation forces this. It requires proof of defense-in-depth strategies, things like proper network segmentation, enforcing least privilege access, demonstrating real knowledge of cloud security architecture. It's way beyond just running a basic vulnerability scan.
The blog gives a great example here. A healthcare analytics company dealing with protected health information, PHI, and needing HITRUST certification. HITRUST, please, is notoriously rigorous, right? Like 19 domains, over 250 controls.
Oh yeah, HITRUST is definitely demanding. So for this company, compliance couldn't be an afterthought. It had to be woven into daily operations.
Yep.
Rhythmic implemented continuous monitoring using tools like AWS Guard Duty and AWS Config. Think of Guard Duty as like an automated security guard, constantly watching for anything weird, logins from strange places, unusual data access patterns, and flagging it immediately. And AWS Config acts like a compliance auditor, constantly checking that resource configurations match the required security policies.
And this is managed efficiently with things like AWS Systems Manager for automated patching.
Exactly. Plus, they used AWS organizations to create separate, isolated accounts for different environments, development, staging, production, which is critical for handling sensitive data like PHI securely. And the result, it was measurable. Their remediation time for critical security issues went from potentially days down to under 15 minutes for the high priority stuff.
Wow. Days to minutes.
What?
Yeah, the systems just caught things way earlier, which directly lowers business risk.
That's the proof of real operational maturity right there. Okay, let's shift gears to money. Benefit number 4, cost optimization that delivers actual ROI. We touched on this earlier, the potential conflict if an MSP just resells AWS and profits more when your bill's higher. How does the AWS validation fix that incentive problem?
It flips the incentive. The validation audit requires partners to actively demonstrate cost optimization capabilities. They have to show documented savings for clients year after year. So they're pushed to find and eliminate waste, not ignore it. They need to prove they're effectively using AWS cost tools, implementing automated controls like turning off unused resources, and conducting regular reviews that lead to measurable savings.
Okay, most people know about basic stuff like reserved instances or savings plans. That feels like table stakes now. But the blog mentions an advertising intelligence SaaS company where costs were growing faster than revenue. Rhythmic apparently went much deeper than just our eyes.
That's right. The problem wasn't just idle servers. It was deeper architectural inefficiency. It was actually tying up senior engineers in manual data processing tasks. So the optimization went beyond just compute discounts. It involved things like adding strategic caching layers, implementing smarter query routing, and aggregating common dashboard queries to reduce load.
Can you explain query routing quickly? How does that save money?
Sure. It basically means making sure that when data is requested, say for a dashboard, the system finds the smartest, fastest, and cheapest way to get it. Instead of running a complex, expensive database query every single time, maybe you can get the answer from a closer, faster cache first. Or maybe it combines several similar requests. It's about finding those micro efficiencies that add up.
Got it. And the result for that company was pretty staggering.
Yeah.
An initial savings of $500,000 a year.
Yep, $500,000 annually.
Yeah.
That kind of saving really changes the game. It turns infrastructure from just a cost center into something predictable and scalable.
It really does. Okay, final benefit, number 5. AWS relationship benefits that drive business value. What does having that official MSP designation give the client that some other provider just can't offer? What's the inside track advantage?
It's about access and influence, really. We're talking about direct escalation paths within AWS support. So if there's a major issue, you're not stuck in the standard queue. You get priority attention. It also often means early access to new AWS services under beta or private preview. Your team can start experimenting and innovating with new tech before it's even generally available.
So you get a head start on the competition.
Exactly. Plus, there could be opportunities for things like co-selling with AWS or getting access to AWS funding programs to offset project costs.
So the non-validated provider is just another customer, but the validated MSP has AWS's ear, essentially.
That's a good way to put it. The designation signals that AWS sees this partner as strategically important and has, skin in the game regarding their client's success.
Look at the financial services example from the blog, The Company Doing Auto Finance Documents. By working with Rhythmic, leveraging that MSP relationship, and using AWS organizations smartly, they cut their overhead costs for onboarding new enterprise clients by 80%.
80%? That's huge. Massive.
Mm-hmm.
And that included both the AWS infrastructure costs and the internal management effort. It directly accelerated their ability to grow their core business.
Okay, so wrapping this all together, the 5 points. Validated operational chocks, end-to-end management, built-in security and compliance, real cost optimization, and that direct AWS partnership. The big picture seems to be that with the right partner, infrastructure stops being this constant source of anxiety and firefighting. The real difference is having a partner who's been vetted, who isn't afraid to push back on maybe a less than ideal plan, who brings better architectural options to the table, and whose success is tied directly to your business outcomes.
Precisely. And think about your own team. Every hour your engineers spend wrestling with infrastructure problems, patching servers, dealing with alerts, that's an hour they aren't building the features your customers want, the features that actually generate revenue. A partner like Rhythmic, because they've mastered the operations through that validation process, can start with your business goals, be upfront about the technical debt you might have, and focus on the changes that deliver the most value quickly and safely.
This has been the Finely Tuned Infrastructure Podcast by Rhythmic Technologies. This content was actually generated using AI, and you can find the original blog post this was based on, plus more insights, over at rhythmictech.com.